Ivano Ferraro came home early and froze. His 9-year-old autistic son stood in the garden, fists raised, sweat pouring down his face. And his maid? She was circling him like a predator. Again. Faster. Don't think, react. Ivano's hand went to his gun. What the hell is she doing to my son? But before he could move, she dropped a photograph at his feet. Julian. Walking out of school. Red crosshairs drawn over his face. Your enemies know about him, she said coldly. And they've got 72 hours. Ivano's blood turned to ice. Who are you? Her eyes were steel. Someone who failed to save a child once before. Her voice cracked. I won't fail yours. His phone buzzed. Breach confirmed. Internal. Someone inside betrayed him. And the only person who could save his son? The woman he never saw coming. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comment section where you are watching from, because tomorrow I'll be giving you an interesting story such as this one and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Ivano Ferraro's car pulled through the iron gates at 4:47 p.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. The meeting in the city had been a waste of time. Posturing. Lies wrapped in expensive suits. He'd walked out, told his driver to take him home, and now he sat in the back seat watching his estate grow larger through the tinted window. 12 acres. 42 security cameras. Armed guards rotating every 6 hours. Impenetrable. Or so he thought. He stepped out of the car, loosened his tie, and walked toward the side entrance. The house was quiet. Olivia, the housekeeper, was probably in the laundry wing. Nora, the maid, would be in the kitchen prepping dinner. Julian would be in his room, arranged toys in perfect lines, humming to himself. Predictable. Safe. Controlled. But as Ivano rounded the corner toward the garden, he heard something that made him stop cold. A voice. Sharp. Commanding. Again. Faster this time. Don't think, react. It was Nora. Ivano's brow furrowed. He moved toward the sound, his footsteps silent on the stone path. And then he saw them. Julian, his 9-year-old son, stood in the center of the garden in a defensive stance, fists raised, feet planted. His face was flushed, his curls damp with sweat. And circling him like a predator was Nora. She wasn't wearing her usual modest dress. She wore black athletic pants and a fitted tank top, her hair tied back. Her movements were fluid, precise, lethal. She lunged. Julian blocked. Clumsy, but committed. Good, Nora said. Now counter. Elbow to the ribs, pivot, run. Julian tried. His elbow shot out, his body twisted. And then he saw his father. Dad. Everything stopped. Nora's head snapped toward Ivano. Her expression didn't change, but her body tensed, coiled. Ivano's voice came out low. Dangerous. What the hell is this? Julian's hands dropped. His eyes went wide, terrified. Dad, Inside. Ivano snapped. Now. Julian looked at Nora, panicked. She nodded once, calm. Go ahead, baby. It's okay. Julian ran. And then it was just the two of them. Ivano stepped forward, his jaw tight, fury radiating off him like heat. You want to explain why you're teaching my son to fight? In my house? Behind my back. Nora straightened, met his gaze without flinching. Because someone has to. Excuse me. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded photograph, and tossed it at his feet. Ivano stared at her for a beat, then looked down. He bent, picked it up, unfolded it. and his blood turned to ice. It was Julian, walking out of his school, backpack on, smiling at something off camera. And drawn over his face, in red ink, were crosshairs. Ivano's hand tightened around the photo. His voice came out like gravel. "Where did you get this?" "Intercepted it," Nora said evenly. 4 days ago. From an encrypted message sent to one of your men." His head snapped up. "Which one?" "Does it matter?" she said coldly. "The point is, they know about Julian. They have his routines, his school, his schedule, and they're coming." Ivano's mind was racing. He scanned her face, looking for deception, for cracks, for anything. But all he saw was steel. "You expect me to believe," he said slowly, "that you, my maid, intercepted intel meant for my organization? That you just happened to stop a hit on my son?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Nora said. "But that photo is real. The threat is real. And if you don't act fast, Julian won't make it to his 10th birthday." Ivano's chest heaved. His hand moved instinctively toward the gun at his waist. Nora didn't move. "Go ahead," she said quietly. "Shoot me. Lock me up. Whatever makes you feel in control. But when they come for him and you're not ready, don't say I didn't warn you." "Who the hell are you?" Ivano growled. Nora's eyes flickered. Something dark, something buried. Someone who's seen this before. Someone who knows how it ends. She turned to leave. "Don't move," Ivano barked. She stopped, glanced back over her shoulder. "You've got about 72 hours. Maybe less. I suggest you spend them wisely." Ivano pulled his phone from his pocket. Dialed. "Nico. Get to the house. Now. And bring Vince." He looked back at Nora. "You don't leave this property until I know exactly what's going on." "Understood." She tilted her head, almost amused. "Wasn't planning on it." 2 weeks earlier. Nora Chen wiped down the kitchen counter for the 3rd time that morning. Her movements mechanical, soothing in their repetition. The house was silent except for the distant hum of a vacuum cleaner upstairs. Olivia. Always working, never asking questions. That's what Nora liked about this job, the invisibility of it. She showed up, cleaned, cooked, disappeared into the background of other people's lives. For 2 years that had been enough. She'd stopped looking over her shoulder. Stopped flinching at loud noises. Stopped dreaming about Kabul, about the explosion, about the boy with dark eyes who'd trusted her to get him out alive. She'd failed him. And when the mission collapsed, when her cover was blown and her team was scattered, she'd done the only thing she could. She vanished. New name. New life. New country, eventually. Ivano Ferraro's estate had been a fluke. A referral from a friend of a friend. Good pay. Private. Secure. The irony wasn't lost on her. Hiding in the home of a man who trafficked in violence. But he didn't know her. No one did. That's how she wanted it. Nora glanced at the clock. 3:15 p.m. Julian would be home soon. She pulled out the ingredients for his snack. Apple slices, almond butter, a small bowl of pretzels arranged just so. The boy liked order. She understood that. Order was control. Control was safety. Her phone buzzed. She froze. It was the burner. The one she kept taped inside the bottom drawer of her nightstand. The one she checked once a week out of habit, out of paranoia. The one that hadn't made a sound in 18 months. Nora's heart rate spiked. She dried her hands, walked quickly to her room off the kitchen, and locked the door behind her. She pulled the phone out, stared at the screen. One message. Encrypted. From a number she didn't recognize. She opened it. And everything changed. The message was brief, clinical. Contract confirmed. Target: Julian Ferraro. Age 9. Timeline: 14 days. Payment on completion. Attached was a photo. Julian, walking out of his school, smiling, crosshairs drawn over his face. Nora's breath caught. Her hands trembled. She read it again, then a third time, her mind racing. This wasn't random. This was a leak. Someone inside Ivano's organization had sold out his son. Someone close. She should walk away. This wasn't her fight. She wasn't that person anymore. But when she closed her eyes, she saw another boy. Another contract. Another failure. No. Nora opened her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. She traced the message, followed the digital breadcrumbs, cracked into a server she had no business accessing. It took her 4 hours. By the time she was done, she had a name, a timeline, and a sickening certainty. Julian Ferraro was going to die in 2 weeks unless someone stopped it. And Ivano had no idea. That night, Nora stood outside Julian's bedroom door, listening to him hum softly to himself. He was arranging his toy cars in a line, speaking to them in a gentle voice. She knocked lightly. "Julian? Can I come in?" "Okay." She stepped inside. The boy glanced up at her, smiled shyly. "Hi, Miss Nora." "Hi, baby." She sat on the edge of his bed. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Do you know what it means to be strong?" Julian tilted his head, thinking. "Like lifting heavy things?" Nora smiled softly. "Not just that. Being strong means knowing how to protect yourself. How to stay safe when things get scary." Julian's face grew serious. "Is something scary coming?" She hesitated. Then, "Maybe. But I'm not going to let anything happen to you." "Okay. Okay. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Julian looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I trust you." Nora's throat tightened. "Good. Then tomorrow, after school, I'm going to teach you some things. Important things. And you can't tell your dad yet. Not until I know it's safe." "Why?" "Because sometimes grown-ups don't see danger until it's too late. And I need to make sure you're ready." Julian studied her, then whispered, "Are you scared?" Nora reached out, brushed a curl from his forehead. "Terrified. But that's okay. Being scared means you care. And I care about you very much." He smiled, small and brave. "I care about you too, Miss Nora." The next day, she started training him. Small things at first. How to stand. How to breathe. How to move when someone grabbed him. Julian was awkward, uncertain, but he listened. He tried. And every day, Nora checked the timeline. 12 days. 10 days. 7. She pushed him harder. Taught him strikes, blocks, how to break a hold. He fell, got up, fell again. But he didn't quit. "Why do I have to learn this?" he asked one afternoon, panting. Nora crouched in front of him. "Because you're stronger than you think. And one day you might need to prove it. Will you be there?" "Always," she promised. She didn't tell him that always had an expiration date. She didn't tell him that the contract had been moved up, that they had 4 days left, and that when Ivano found out, he'd either believe her or kill her. Present day. 5:12 p.m. Ivano stood in his office, the photograph clutched in his hand, his phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what you're doing, Nico. Drop it and get here. Now." He ended the call, tossed the phone onto his desk, and stared at the image again. The crosshairs. The date stamp. 4 days ago. His son had been walking around with a target on his back for 4 days, and he'd known nothing. The door opened. Vince stepped in, 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle and loyalty. Ivano's head of security. Boss. Ivano handed him the photo without a word. Vince's jaw tightened. Where'd you get this? The maid. Vince's eyes snapped up. Nora. Says she intercepted it. Says someone inside leaked Julian's schedule. Ivano's voice was sharp, clipped. Says we've got 72 hours before they make a move. Vince's expression darkened. You believe her? I don't know what to believe. Ivano ran a hand through his hair, paced to the window. But that photo is real. The metadata checks out. And she knew details, encrypted channels, internal routing, things a maid shouldn't know. So either she's telling the truth, Vince said slowly, or she's part of it. Ivano turned, his eyes cold. Find out which. Run her background again. Deep this time. I want to know every place she's been, every alias she's used, everything. And if she runs? She won't get far. Ivano's voice was ice. Lock down the estate. No one in or out without my say. And put someone on her. I want eyes on her every second. Vince nodded and left. Ivano stood alone in the silence, his mind racing. He thought about Julian, about the way his son had looked at Nora, the way he'd run when Ivano had shouted, the way Nora had told him, "Go ahead, baby. It's okay." Like she was the one protecting him. Like Ivano was the threat. His hands curled into fists. Downstairs, Nora sat on a bench in the garden, her hands resting on her knees, her breathing steady. She'd expected this. The anger. The suspicion. The lockdown. What she hadn't expected was how much it would hurt to see Julian's face when Ivano had yelled at him. The boy had looked terrified. Not of the danger she'd been training him for, but of his own father. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn. You're to come with me, a voice said. Nico. Ivano's right hand. Mid-40s, scarred knuckles, dead eyes. Where? Nora asked calmly. Somewhere you can't cause trouble while the boss figures out what to do with you. Nora stood, turned to face him. 2 other men flanked him, hands near their waistbands. She could drop all 3 in under 10 seconds. But she didn't. Lead the way, she said. They took her to the wine cellar, a converted storage room beneath the east wing. Cold. Concrete walls. 1 dim bulb overhead. A chair in the center. Sit, Nico ordered. Nora sat. He didn't bind her hands. Didn't need to. The door was steel, the lock electronic. She wasn't getting out unless they let her out. Nico leaned against the wall, studying her. You're awfully calm for someone who just got caught. I didn't get caught, Nora said evenly. I told him. Why? Because Julian doesn't have time for me to play it safe. Nico's eyes narrowed. You really expect us to believe you're some kind of hero? That you just happened to intercept a hit on the boss's kid? Nora met his gaze. I don't care what you believe. Check your systems. Check your logs. Someone inside this organization sold that boy out. And while you're wasting time interrogating me, they're getting closer. Or, Nico said, stepping forward, you're the plant. You fed us the photo to gain trust, to get close, and now you're waiting for your moment. Nora didn't blink. If I wanted the boy dead, he'd already be gone. I've had 2 years. The room fell silent. Nico stared at her for a long moment, then turned and left. The lock clicked behind him. Nora leaned back in the chair, closed her eyes, and exhaled slowly. She'd gambled everything on Ivano being smart enough to verify the threat before it was too late. She just hoped she hadn't miscalculated. Upstairs, Julian sat on his bed, knees pulled to his chest, rocking slightly. His father had yelled. Miss Nora was gone. And he didn't understand why. There was a knock on his door. Julian. Ivano's voice. Softer now. Go away. The door opened anyway. Ivano stepped inside, closed it behind him. He stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets, searching for words. I know you're upset, he started. You hurt her, Julian said, his voice cracking. You hurt Miss Nora. I didn't. Ivano stopped himself. Took a breath. I need to make sure she's not dangerous. That she's not trying to hurt you. Julian looked up at him, eyes red. She's not. She's keeping me safe. How do you know that? Because she told me. Julian's hands twisted in his lap. She said bad people were coming. And she was going to make sure I was ready. Ivano's chest tightened. She told you that? Julian nodded. She said sometimes grown-ups don't see danger until it's too late. And she didn't want me to get hurt. Ivano felt something crack inside him. He crossed the room, sat on the edge of Julian's bed. Why didn't you tell me? Because you don't listen, Julian whispered. You're always busy. Always angry. And I didn't want you to send her away. The words hit Ivano like a punch. He looked at his son, this beautiful fragile boy who saw the world differently, who struggled to connect, who'd found safety in the arms of a woman Ivano had barely noticed. I'm sorry, Ivano said quietly. I should have listened. I should have seen. Julian didn't respond. Ivano stood, walked to the door, then paused. I'm going to figure this out. I promise. As he left, Julian whispered to the empty room, Please don't hurt her. In his office, Ivano's computer pinged. He opened the file Vince had sent. And his blood ran cold. Nora Chen. Former CIA operative. Special Activities Division. Presumed Kia. Kabul. 2022. Below it, a service record. Dozens of successful extractions. Fluent in 6 languages. Expert in hand-to-hand combat, firearms, tactical strategy. Decorated. Deadly. And living in his house for 2 years. Ivano scrolled down. Found a note flagged in red. Last known operation. Protection detail for high-value target. Minor. Mission failure. Target deceased. Operative disappeared. Ivano's hands shook. She'd lost a child before. And now she was trying to save his. He grabbed his phone, called Nico. Let her out. Boss. Now. The wine cellar door opened. Nora didn't move from the chair. She'd been sitting in the dark for 40 minutes, counting her breaths, calculating outcomes, preparing for every possibility. Nico stepped inside. His expression unreadable. Boss wants to see you. She stood slowly, her body still calm, controlled. He figure it out? Nico didn't answer. Just stepped aside. Nora walked past him, down the corridor, up the stone steps. 2 guards flanked her, but they kept their distance. Smart. They'd read the file too. They led her to Ivano's office. He was standing at the window, his back to the door, shoulders rigid. On his desk, her service record, printed and spread out like evidence at a crime scene. Leave us, Ivano said without turning. Nico hesitated. Boss. Out. The door closed. Silence settled between them, heavy and sharp. Finally, Ivano spoke. Nora Chen. Special Activities Division. 23 confirmed operations. 0 failures. He turned to face her. Until Kabul. Nora's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. His name was Rafiq, Ivano continued, his voice low. 8 years old. Son of an intelligence asset. You were supposed to extract him when his father's cover was blown. He paused. But the convoy was hit. IED. You survived. He didn't. Nora's hands curled into fists at her sides. I don't need you to remind me. You disappeared after that, Ivano said. Officially declared dead. No contact with the agency. No trace. He stepped closer. Until you showed up at my door 2 years ago, calling yourself a maid. I needed to disappear, Nora said flatly. So I did. Why here? Random chance. Wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe the right place. She met his eyes. Does it matter? Ivano studied her. This woman who'd scrubbed his floors, made his son's lunches, lived like a ghost in his house. A woman who could kill a man 6 different ways before he hit the ground. Why didn't you tell me, he asked. About the threat. About who you are. Would you have believed me? Nora shot back. A maid walks into your office and tells you there's a contract on your son? You would have had me disappeared before I finished the sentence. Ivano didn't deny it. I needed proof, Nora continued. I needed to make sure Julian could survive long enough for you to pull your head out of your ass and see what was right in front of you. Watch it, Ivano warned. Or what? Nora stepped forward. You'll lock me up again? Waste more time while your enemies get closer. Her voice dropped. Dangerous. I didn't survive 2 years in hiding just to watch another child die because the adults around him were too proud to listen. The words hung in the air like a blade. Ivano's phone buzzed. He grabbed it, read the message, and his face went pale. What? Nora demanded. He turned the screen toward her. It was from his tech specialist, Luca. 3 words. Breach confirmed. Internal. Below it, a screenshot of encrypted communications. Timestamps. Coordinates. And a name. Tony Soprano. Head of Logistics. Nora's eyes narrowed. He's the leak. Ivano's voice was ice. He's been with me for 8 years. And he just sold your son for a payout. Nora's tone was sharp. How much time do we have? Ivano scrolled through the messages, his face darkening with every line. Luca says the timeline's been moved up. They're not waiting 14 days. How long? He looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw fear in his eyes. 72 hours. Maybe less. Nora exhaled slowly. Then we don't have time for you to decide whether to trust me. We have time to prepare. Ivano stared at her for a long beat. Then he walked to his desk, pulled open a drawer, and removed a Glock 19. He checked the magazine, chambered around, and held it out to her. You trained for this, he said. I need you to do it again. Nora took the gun, felt its weight, its familiarity. It had been 2 years since she'd held one. Her hand didn't shake. What's the plan? She asked. We fortify. Move Julian to the panic room. Sweep the house for bugs, leaks, anything they could use. And we find Tony before he knows we're on to him. He'll run the second he realizes you know. Then we make sure he doesn't realize. Ivano's voice was cold, lethal. I want him here. Tomorrow. For a meeting. And when he walks through that door, I want answers. Nora nodded. And Julian? We keep training him. If something goes wrong, if they get past us, he needs to know how to survive. Agreed. Nora turned toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. What? She looked back over her shoulder. When this is over and your son is safe, we're going to have a conversation about how you talk to him. Ivano's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. He's terrified of disappointing you, Nora said evenly. He thinks you're ashamed of him. And that fear? That's going to get him killed faster than any bullet. Ivano opened his mouth to argue, but she was already gone. That night, Nora returned to Julian's room. He was awake, sitting up in bed, clutching a stuffed bear. Miss Nora? His voice was small. Hey, baby. She sat on the edge of his bed. I'm okay. See. He threw his arms around her, buried his face in her shoulder. I thought Dad hurt you. He didn't. He was just scared. Grown-ups get scared too. Are the bad people still coming? Nora pulled back, looked him in the eye. Yes. But your dad knows now. And we're going to keep you safe. All of us. Julian nodded, then whispered, Will you stay with me tonight? Nora glanced toward the door, then back at him. Yeah, I'll stay. She stretched out on top of the covers, and Julian curled up beside her, his small hand gripping hers. Outside the door, Ivano stood in the hallway, listening. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there, staring at the floor, wondering how he'd let things get so broken, and how a stranger had become the one person his son trusted most. The next morning, 6:47 a.m. Ivano found Nora in the kitchen, brewing coffee. She was already dressed in tactical pants and a fitted black shirt, her hair tied back. The gun he'd given her was holstered at her hip. She looked like what she was, a soldier preparing for war. Couldn't sleep, he asked. Haven't slept well in 2 years. She poured him a cup without asking, slid it across the counter. You. Same. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the coming storm pressing down on them both. Tony's meeting is at 10, Ivano said. Vince and Nico will be here. I want you in the room. Nora raised an eyebrow. You sure? Your men don't exactly trust me. They don't have to trust you. They have to trust me. He took a sip of coffee. And I need someone in that room who can read people the way you do. She nodded. Fair enough. Ivano hesitated then. Last night, what you said about Julian, about him being afraid of me. Nora met his eyes, unflinching. He is. I know. The admission seemed to cost him. I don't know how to talk to him. He doesn't think like I do. Doesn't respond the way I expect. And every time I try, I just make it worse. So stop trying to make him respond the way you want, Nora said quietly. And start listening to what he's actually saying. Ivano's jaw tightened. You make it sound easy. It's not. But it's necessary. She set her mug down. You want to know why I really started training him? I know why. The contract. That's not the only reason. Nora's voice was steady, but something beneath it trembled. I started training him because I saw the way he looked at you. Like he was trying so hard to be enough. To be normal. To make you proud. She paused. I saw that look before. In Kabul. Ivano went still. Rafiq, she continued, her gaze distant now, locked on some memory only she could see. That was his name. The boy I was supposed to save. He was 8. Autistic. Brilliant. His father was one of our assets. A translator who'd helped NATO forces for years. When his cover was blown, The Taliban put a price on his whole family. She took a breath. We extracted the father first. Standard protocol. Then we went back for Rafiq. But the father didn't tell us. Her voice cracked, just slightly. He didn't tell us Rafiq wouldn't leave without his books. This kid had a collection. Science books, astronomy, math. He'd arranged them in a specific order. And when we tried to rush him out, he had a meltdown. Ivano listened, his chest tight. We lost time, Nora continued. Precious minutes while I tried to calm him down, tried to make him understand we had to go now. And he kept saying, "But they're not in order. They're not in order." She closed her eyes. I helped him. I reorganized the books. Made sure they were perfect. And then we ran. Her hands trembled. We almost made it. We were 50 meters from the convoy when the IED went off. I remember the sound, like the world splitting open. I remember flying, hitting the ground. And when I looked up, she stopped. Ivano's voice was barely a whisper. "Nora." "He was 10 feet away from me," she said, her eyes glistening. "And I couldn't reach him. I tried, God, I tried, but the flames, the smoke. And he was just lying there staring at the sky. And you know what his last words were?" Ivano shook his head. "Did I do good?" Nora's voice broke. "That's what he asked me. Did I do good?" Like even in that moment, all he wanted was to know he'd been enough. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "So when I see Julian looking at you the same way, desperate for approval, terrified of failing, it tears me apart. Because I know what happens when kids like that don't feel safe. When they don't feel seen." She looked at Ivano, her eyes fierce. "They stop fighting. They give up. And I won't let that happen again." Ivano's throat was tight. I'm not trying to make him feel that way." "I know," Nora said softly. "But intent doesn't matter. Impact does." The kitchen fell silent. Finally, Ivano spoke. "After this is over, after we deal with Tony and the threat, will you help me? Help me figure out how to be the father he needs." Nora studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Yeah, I will." 9:52 a.m. Tony Nakoni walked through the front door of the estate, whistling. He was a stocky man in his 50s, graying at the temples, with a warm smile that had earned him trust for nearly a decade. He'd been at Ivano's side through wars, betrayals, and bloodshed. And now he was selling out a 9-year-old boy. "Dom!" Tony called out, his voice cheerful. "You said it was urgent?" "Conference room," Ivano replied from the top of the stairs. "Now." Tony's smile faltered slightly, but he followed. Inside the conference room, Vince and Nico were already seated. And standing in the corner, arms crossed, was Nora. Tony's eyes flicked to her, confused. Dom? Why's the maid here?" "Sit down, Tony," Ivano said coldly. Tony sat, his confusion deepening. "What's going on?" Ivano placed a folder on the table. Slid it across. Tony opened it. His face went white. Inside were printouts of the encrypted messages. The contract details. The transfer receipts. His name. Over and over. "Dom, I can explain." "Explain." Ivano's voice was a blade. "Explain how you sold out my son? Explain how you looked me in the eye every day while planning to put a bullet in Julian's head. It wasn't..." Tony's hands shook. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. They said they just wanted leverage. That they wouldn't actually hurt him." "Leverage?" Nora's voice cut through the room like a whip. She stepped forward, dropped a second photo on the table. Julian. Crosshairs. This look like leverage to you? Tony stared at the image, his face crumbling. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they'd. You didn't care, Ivano snarled. He leaned over the table, his face inches from Tony's. How much did they pay you? 200,000, Tony whispered. I have debts. Gambling. I was desperate. So you sold my son. Tony's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. God, Dom, I'm so sorry. Ivano pulled his gun, pressed it to Tony's forehead. The room froze. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here, Ivano said, his voice shaking with rage. Dom, Vince started. Shut up. Ivano's finger hovered over the trigger. One reason, Tony. One. Tony was sobbing now. I can tell you who hired me. The organization. The plan. Everything. I can help you stop them. Or I put a bullet in you and figure it out myself. Ivano. Nora's voice was calm, steady. We need him alive. For now. Ivano didn't move. He's useless dead, she continued. But alive? He's bait. He's a way in. Let me work with him. I'll get everything we need. Slowly, Ivano lowered the gun. Tony collapsed forward, gasping. Lock him in the basement, Ivano ordered. No phone. No contact. And if he even thinks about running. He looked at Tony with dead eyes. You won't make it to the gate. Vince and Nico hauled Tony out. When they were alone, Ivano turned to Nora. You really think we can use him? I know we can, she said. He's a coward. Cowards talk. Ivano nodded slowly. Then, thank you for stopping me. You would have regretted it, Nora said simply. Maybe. He holstered his gun. But it would have felt good in the moment. Despite everything, Nora almost smiled. 3:27 p.m. The garden had been transformed. What was once a peaceful space of manicured hedges and marble fountains now looked like a training ground. Nora had set up obstacles. Wooden crates, ropes, markers on the ground. A makeshift course designed to teach one simple lesson. How to survive. Julian stood at the starting line, his small chest rising and falling with nervous breaths. Ivano watched from the patio, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Ready? Nora asked Julian. He nodded. Remember what I taught you. Don't think. Just react. Trust your body. She blew a whistle. Julian ran. He ducked under the rope, sidestepped the crate, pivoted at the marker. His movements were clumsy but determined. When he reached the end, he was panting, but his eyes were bright. How'd I do? He called out. Better, Nora said, walking toward him. But you hesitated at the second marker. If someone's chasing you, hesitation gets you caught. Again. Julian groaned but got back in position. They ran the course 6 more times. By the end, Julian was soaked with sweat, his curls plastered to his forehead. But he was smiling, really smiling, and Ivano felt something twist in his chest. He'd never seen his son like this. Confident. Focused. Alive. Take a break, Nora told Julian. Hydrate. Julian jogged to the patio, grabbed his water bottle, and plopped down on the steps beside his father. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Julian said quietly, Are you mad at me? Ivano looked down at him, startled. What? No. Why would I be mad at you? Because I didn't tell you about the training. About Miss Nora. Ivano's jaw tightened. He wanted to say the right thing, something reassuring, something fatherly, but the words felt stuck in his throat. Finally he managed, "I'm not mad at you, Julian. I'm mad at myself." Julian tilted his head, confused. "Why?" "Because you didn't feel safe enough to tell me," Ivano said, his voice rough. "Because I made you feel like you had to hide things from me. That's my fault, not yours." Julian stared at him, his eyes wide. "I'm sorry," Ivano continued, and the words felt foreign, heavy. "I'm sorry I haven't been the father you deserve. But I'm going to try. Okay. I'm going to do better." Julian's lip trembled. Then quietly, "Do you think I'm weird?" Ivano's heart shattered. "No," he said firmly. He turned to face his son fully, placed a hand on his small shoulder. "You're not weird. You're different. And different is good, Julian. It makes you special. It makes you, you. But the kids at school say." "I don't care what they say." Ivano's voice was fierce now. "Those kids don't know you. They don't see what I see. You're smart, and you're brave, and you're stronger than you think. And anyone who can't see that? They're the ones with the problem. Not you." Julian's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really?" And then, for the first time in months, Julian leaned into his father's side. Ivano wrapped an arm around him, pulled him close, and closed his eyes. Across the garden, Nora watched them, her throat tight. 6:15 p.m. The basement was cold and dark. Tony sat on a metal chair, wrists zip-tied to the armrests, his face pale and haggard. He looked up when the door opened. Nora stepped inside, carrying a bottle of water and a file folder. "Thirsty?" she asked. Tony nodded frantically. She unscrewed the cap, held it to his lips. He drank greedily, water dribbling down his chin. When he was done, she set the bottle aside and pulled up a chair opposite him. "Let's talk," she said. "I already told Ivano everything." "You told him what you thought he wanted to hear," Nora interrupted. "Now you're going to tell me the truth." Tony swallowed hard. "I don't." "The organization that hired you," Nora said, opening the folder. "You said it was the Volkov Syndicate. Russian mob out of Brighton Beach. But that doesn't track." "What do you mean?" "The Volkovs don't do hits on kids," Nora said flatly. "It's bad for business. Too much heat. They're smugglers, not assassins. So either you're lying, or someone's using their name as cover." Tony's eyes darted away. "Who approached you, Tony?" Nora leaned forward, her voice soft but dangerous. "Who made the offer?" "I can't. If I tell you, they'll kill me. And if you don't, Ivano will." Nora tilted her head. "At least with me, you've got a chance. Talk." Tony's resolve crumbled. "His name is Gregor. Gregor Volkov. He's the old man's nephew. The black sheep. Got kicked out of the family for being too reckless. Too violent. Where is he?" "I don't know. He contacted me through encrypted channels. Dead drops. I never met him face to face." "When's the hit supposed to happen?" Tony hesitated. Nora's hand moved to the gun at her hip. "Tony." "Tomorrow night," he blurted. "They're hitting the estate tomorrow night. After the security shift change. They've got the schedule, the patrol routes, everything." Nora's blood ran cold. "How many?" "6. Maybe 8. Ex-military. Well armed." Tony was shaking now. "They're not coming to send a message, Nora. They're coming to finish the job." Nora stood, her mind already racing through contingencies, defenses, strategies. One more thing, Tony said desperately. There's a fail-safe. If they can't get to Julian at the estate, they've got a secondary target. What secondary target? Tony's voice dropped to a whisper. The school. They're going to hit him at school if the estate job fails. Nora's stomach twisted. When? Day after tomorrow. During recess. She didn't wait to hear more. She turned and walked out, locking the door behind her. Upstairs, Ivana was in the armory with Vince and Nico, checking weapons, preparing defenses. Nora burst through the door. They're coming tomorrow night, she said without preamble. 6 to 8 men. Ex-military. And if we stop them here, they've got a backup plan at Julian's school. Ivano's face went hard. Then we don't let it get that far. We need a strategy, Vince said. We're outnumbered, and they know the layout. So we change the layout, Nora interrupted. She moved to the table, spread out a blueprint of the estate. We funnel them where we want them. Set traps. Control the engagement. And Julian? Nico asked. He stays in the panic room, Ivano said. With me. No. Nora's voice was firm. You need to be leading the defense. I'll stay with Julian. Like hell. Ivano. She looked at him, her eyes steady. He trusts me. If things go wrong, if they breach the house, I can get him out. You know I can. Ivano wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to protect his son himself. But he looked at Nora, this woman who'd already given up everything to keep Julian safe, and he knew she was right. Fine, he said quietly. But if anything happens to him, it won't, Nora promised. Their eyes held for a moment. Then Ivano turned to his men. All right, let's get to work. That night, after the preparations were complete, Nora found Julian in his room. He was arranging his toy cars again, lining them up with meticulous precision. Hey, baby, she said softly. He looked up, smiled. Hi. She sat beside him on the floor. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Some scary things might happen. But I need you to remember something. What? No matter what happens, your dad and I are going to keep you safe. You understand? Julian nodded slowly. Then in a small voice. Are the bad people really coming? Yeah, Nora said honestly. They are. But we're ready for them. Are you scared? She reached out, brushed a curl from his forehead. Terrified. But you know what I'm more scared of. What? Losing you. Her voice cracked. So I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that doesn't happen. Julian threw his arms around her neck. She held him tight, memorizing the weight of him, the warmth. I love you, Miss Nora, he whispered. Her eyes burned. I love you too, baby. The night was unnaturally quiet. Ivano stood in the control room, watching the security feeds. Vince and Nico were positioned at strategic points throughout the estate. Every entrance was monitored. Every weapon was loaded. And in the panic room beneath the east wing, Nora sat with Julian, a gun in her lap, her eyes alert. Tell me a story, Julian whispered, his voice small in the darkness. Nora glanced at him. He was curled up on the reinforced cot, clutching his stuffed bear. What kind of story? A happy one. She smiled softly. Once upon a time, there was a brave knight who was different from all the other knights. He didn't fight with a sword. He fought with his heart. And everyone said he was too small, too different, too strange to be a hero. But you know what? What? He saved the entire kingdom. Because being different made him see things no one else could. Julian smiled. Like me. Exactly like you. A red light flashed on the security panel. Nora's body went rigid. Stay here. Don't move. Don't make a sound. She pressed a button on her earpiece. Ivano. We've got movement. East perimeter. I see them. Ivano's voice crackled through. 6 hostiles. They're cutting through the fence. Copy. I'm locked down with Julian. The lights in the estate went out. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. And then the gunfire started. Ivano moved through the darkened halls like a ghost, his weapon raised. He heard footsteps, heavy boots on marble, and pressed himself against the wall. 2 men rounded the corner. He fired twice. Both dropped. 2 down, he said into his calm 4 to go. 3, Vince corrected. Just dropped 1 in the south wing. Make that 2, Nico added. Kitchen's clear. That left 3. Ivano moved toward the main staircase, his heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at him to run to the panic room, to get to Julian, but he forced himself to trust Nora. She had this. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs, masked, armed, raising a rifle. Ivano Dove fired mid-roll. The man collapsed. 1 left, Ivano growled. But his calm exploded with static. And then Nora's voice, sharp and urgent. Ivano, they're in the east wing. They found us. His blood turned to ice. The panic room door shuddered under the impact of a battering ram. Nora shoved Julian into the corner. Stay down. Cover your ears. Miss Nora. Now, Julian. He obeyed, curling into a ball, hands over his ears. The door held. Once. Twice. On the 3rd hit, it buckled. A man stepped through, masked and massive, rifle sweeping the room. Nora didn't hesitate. She moved like liquid death, closed the distance before he could aim, drove her elbow into his throat, twisted the rifle from his grip. He stumbled back, gagging, and she swung the weapon like a club, cracking it across his skull. He dropped. But another man was already coming through the door. She raised the rifle, fired. Click. Empty. The man smiled behind his mask and raised his own weapon. A gunshot exploded through the room. But it wasn't his gun. It was Ivano's. The man collapsed, a hole in his chest. Ivano stood in the doorway, breathing hard, his weapon still raised. You okay? He asked. Nora nodded. Julian. I'm okay. Julian's small voice came from the corner. I'm okay. Ivano crossed the room, scooped his son into his arms, held him tight. It's over. You're safe. Julian clung to him, sobbing. Nora leaned against the wall, her hands shaking. Blood was spreading across her side. She'd been grazed by a bullet and hadn't even felt it. Ivano saw it. You're hit. It's nothing. Like hell it is. He looked at Julian. Stay here. Don't move. He crossed to Nora, applied pressure to the wound. She hissed in pain. Told you, Ivano said quietly. You don't leave this family. Nora's eyes met his. Wasn't planning on it. 3 days later. The estate was quiet again. The bodies had been removed. The damage was repaired. Tony had been handed over to people who asked very few questions. Julian was safe. But something had shifted. Ivano sat on the edge of Julian's bed, watching his son sleep. The boy's face was peaceful now, the fear finally gone. A soft knock on the door. Nora stepped inside, her side bandaged, moving carefully. How is he? She whispered. Sleeping. Finally. Ivano stood, gestured toward the hallway. Can we talk? They walked to the study, and Ivano poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "I never thanked you," he said quietly. "Properly. For everything." Nora took the glass. "You don't need to." "Yes, I do." Ivano's voice was rough with emotion. "You saved my son. You risked everything, your safety, your life, your chance to stay hidden, for a kid who wasn't even yours." "He felt like mine," Nora said simply. "From the moment I saw him, he felt like mine." Ivano's throat tightened. "I want you to stay. Not as the maid. As family. As whatever you want to be. But I need you here." "He needs you here." Nora studied him for a long moment. "What about your world? Your business? Men like Tony. Men who see me as less than." "Then they'll learn," Ivano said firmly. "Or they'll leave. I don't care anymore. Julian comes first. And you're part of that now." Nora's eyes glistened. "You mean that?" "Every word." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll stay." Relief flooded Ivano's face. "Thank you. On one condition," Nora added. "Name it." "You let me keep training him. Not just to fight, but to be confident. To know his worth. To never feel like he has to hide who he is." Ivano smiled. A real smile, perhaps the first in years. "Deal." 6 months later. The gym was modest, a community center in Brooklyn, far from the opulence of the estate. But it was where Julian had asked to come. Ivano and Nora sat in the bleachers, watching as Julian stepped onto the mat for his first junior sparring match. He was nervous, his hands fidgeting, his breathing quick, but when he looked up at them, they both gave him a thumbs up. He smiled. The whistle blew. Julian moved, not perfectly, not like a trained fighter, but with confidence. With purpose. He blocked, countered, and stayed on his feet. When the round ended, he'd earned a point. The small crowd cheered. Julian's face lit up like the sun. After the match, he ran to them, still buzzing with adrenaline. "Did you see? Did you see what I did?" "I saw," Ivano said, his voice thick. He pulled Julian into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "You were amazing, baby," Nora added, ruffling his hair. Julian beamed. Then he looked between them, his expression suddenly serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," Ivano said. "Are we a family now?" "Like a real family." Ivano glanced at Nora. She was watching him, waiting. He looked back at his son. "Yeah, Julian. We're a real family." "Good," Julian said, smiling. "Because I was worried." "You don't ever have to worry about that again," Nora promised. As they walked out of the gym together, Ivano's hand on Julian's shoulder, Nora walking beside them, something settled in the air. Something warm and true. They weren't perfect. Their past was complicated, their future uncertain. But they were together. And that was enough. Outside, as they reached the car, Julian tugged on Nora's sleeve. "Miss Nora?" "Yeah, baby. Thank you for teaching me how to fight." She crouched down to his level, her eyes soft. "You want to know a secret?" He nodded. "You already knew how to fight. I just reminded you." She tapped his chest, right over his heart. "The real fight? It's always been in here. You're braver than you know." Julian hugged her tight. Over his head, Nora's eyes met Ivano's. He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." She smiled, mouthed back. "Always." And in that moment, surrounded by the noise of the city, the chaos of life, they found something rare and precious. Peace. Not because the danger was gone, it never would be, not in Ivano's world. But because they'd chosen each other. And that choice, more than any weapon or strategy or plan, was what would keep them safe. Together. A year later, Julian stood in the same garden where Nora had first taught him to fight. But this time, he wasn't training. He was teaching. Another boy, younger, shyer, also on the spectrum, stood nervously in front of him. "It's okay," Julian said gently. "I was scared too. But Miss Nora taught me something important." "What?" the boy asked. Julian smiled. "Being different doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. You just have to believe it." From the patio, Ivano and Nora watched, side by side. "He's going to be okay," Nora said softly. "Because of you," Ivano replied. She shook her head. "Because of us." Ivano reached over, took her hand, squeezed it gently. She squeezed back. And in that garden, where fear had once lived, where violence had once threatened, something new had grown. Hope, love, family. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.